New episode of Gutenberg learning and creating custom blocks. In the previous videos you learned about how to create a custom block using a plugin, and we used WordPress scripts package to set it up. And in this video you're going to learn about attributes and components. Okay, now in previous video we learned about how edit and save methods work, and as we know that they describe the structure of the block's appearance. However, they only return simple paragraphs. So in this block we're going to learn that how the block structure can be changed when the user changes a block. Okay, when the user types something in the editor, how can we capture that information and save it? Okay, so guys, before we proceed further, just to let you know that you need to have a basic understanding of React as well as JSX and ES6, because that's exactly what we will be using in this tutorial to create our blocks. Okay, so if you don't know these information, then I suggest you can go on to reactjs.org and you can just learn from there. I will also be creating tutorials on React and you can learn from there as well, and then you can come back. Okay, but basic knowledge on these are important because that's what we'll be using. In fact, Gutenberg uses React, REDUX, JSX, ES6 in the core. Okay, so understanding, eventually you will need to learn them if you want to understand it better. Okay, great. So let's continue further. So I'm assuming that if you're continuing further, you know React, you have at least a basic understanding on React, and if you know React, you know that there is something called state in a component, right? So how we build functionality is, for example, user types something in the input box, we add an event to the input box. So whenever user types something, we capture that information and we set that to the state of the component, and every time a state changes in a component, the render method is called, and that's how we are able to see the new changes that the user has entered. So a similar thing is used here as well, because again Gutenberg is using React, so that's what you're going to see here as well. Okay, so we're going to talk about something called state of a block. So to achieve the dynamic change in the block structure when the user changes a block or enters something in the WordPress block editor, okay, a state of a block is maintained through the editing session as plain JavaScript object, and every time block is updated, the edit method is called, guys. So you can consider edit method as render methods. You know that in a React component, every time the state changes, the render method is called. So similarly here as well, every time the block is updated, the edit method is called. Okay, now there is something called attributes, guys. So to extract the JavaScript object again from the save content of a post and reuse it, we use block types attribute property. Okay, so if you're using an edit method, if we are capturing the information from what user has entered and we are storing that information in state and then we are saving into the database, we also need a way to extract that information, and that's where the attributes come in handy. Okay, and the other job of the attribute as well, that we define an attribute in the register block type method, and then we pass those attributes to edit and save method using props, and those information are available there. Okay, so they provide a mechanism to map from the saved markup to a JavaScript representation of block. Okay, so enough of theory, guys, let's get into action, because I think you will understand it better when I show it to you by doing it in action rather than just explaining it to you in theory. Okay, so let's continue working on it. So guys, if you remember, this is where we left in the second last video, I think, where we had gone ahead and register a block type, and you can see these are edit and save methods, and currently all they're doing is just returning static content, which is hello world, and this is saving hello world. This is not doing anything dynamic. If user types and changes something in the editor, nothing is going to happen, because all we're going to saving is just same static old content. Okay, so to make it more happening and make it dynamic, let's go ahead and add an attribute first. Okay, so I'll type attributes and then I'll put content put a comma here. So I'm naming content, you can name it anything you want. It takes different properties. One is type. Type could be anything, guys. It could be string, it could be array, it could be object. I'm gonna put that as string. Okay, sorry, array. I'll put that as array. Then it's gonna ask you for selector. So what do you want to select? You know, where do you want the data from? I want it from a p tag, so I'm gonna put p. Okay, and then it's gonna ask you source. Do you want the p tags, the value from p tags source attribute? Do you want it from the any other attribute of p tag, or do you want it from children? I want it from children. So what is children? Basically the content of p tag, whatever is the text is inside of p tag, I want to capture that. Okay, so children. So so that's how it's going to target. Okay, so you can say that you know, they provide you a mechanism to map the information from the saved content. Right, so what we're going to do now is, let's get rid of this, we don't need it, and I'm going to use an arrow function over here, and let's return something from the arrow function. Let's just return empty div over here. Okay, because remember, render method should return something, otherwise you will get an error. So that's why you need to return something over here. What I'm interested in knowing is that, remember we just discussed a while back that this entire attribute is available to you in form of props, and this props is available to both edit method as well as save method. If any change happens over here in attributes, that change will reflect both in edit as well as save, and if edit methods changes anything over here, it will be available in props as well. Okay, so the best way to find out what's inside of this is to console log it. We have been doing it all the while. Let's do it again, which means console logging. Okay, so this is edit props, and let's see what we get in props. Okay, so if you remember in the previous video, I had shown you that what we're doing here is that we're using WordPress scripts package, and we have written some scripts. Okay, so if you run npm run dev, it's going to run nwp scripts CLI, the start command, so it's going to start up a webpack dev server, and that's going to convert our index.js file, convert the ESX, the React, JSX, all of that into a JavaScript code that browsers can understand, most browsers can understand. Okay, and it's going to throw that into this index.js. We'll create that and bundle it up. You can see the webpack function over here. Okay, and that index.js is being included into our main plugin file, which is right here. This has all been discussed in the previous video, just to recap kind of thing. Okay, great. So that's what is being rendered, and this is our plugin basically. Okay, so what we need to do, guys, is just run this command npm run start, and it's going to start our webpack dev server, and it's going to be in the watch mode, so it will constantly be watching for the changes. So any changes that we make here will automatically be bundled and reflected here, which means it will go and get enqueued on the server side as well. Okay, so you can see it's done its job. It's gone ahead and bundled up. Okay, so let's go over here now. Let's see, this is it. Okay, let's refresh the page, and let's look for our, here is our custom block basic example. Click on it, and if we do an inspect element console, sure enough, you can see in edit props you get an object. If you click on that object, you can see you get attributes. This is exactly what we were interested in, guys, right? See, we check in attributes, I'm getting content. Of course you are not getting these properties, but you are actually getting content, and that's what I'm interested in. Basically what we're trying to achieve is that whenever user types something over here, I'm going to set that information into this attribute using set attributes method, which is also provided to us here. Okay, and that information can be taken into props, because remember I explained to you that whatever information you change over here is also passed to the save method as props. So I can take that information, put it here, and save it in a database. So these things will be clear to you in a moment. This is just an explanation of what we are trying to achieve. Okay, so You can see there are other methods also. You have class name. Okay, so we have class name available. So what Gutenberg does is it takes this information, removes slash, put dash over here, and puts dash over here, and then prefix it w-block. That's how it gets class name. So class name is also available. You have set attributes available. So you can consider set attributes as set state in React. Okay, so what does set state do? Set state actually sets the data on your state. Okay, so we're going to use set attribute for that. That's what Gutenberg provides us. Okay, and then there is something called components, guys. So before we continue further, it's important we discuss components. So if you work with React, or if you have basic knowledge, you already know what components are. And why do we need components in Gutenberg? Is because many blocks share the same complex behavior, and components provides us reusability. Okay, why should we write code over and over again when we can reuse that code? So reusable components are made available to simplify implementation of your blocks edit method, and the common ones are rich text, block controls, alignment toolbar, inspect, color palette. So in this specific video we're going to talk about rich text, and in the following video you'll learn about block controls and other ones as well. Okay, and I'm going to show you towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you where can you find all of the components that are available to you, and I'm also going to show you where you can find that information in Core. Okay, so enough talking, let's get into action. So I'm going to use rich text component. So before using it I need to pull it out. So this is called object destructuring in ES6. I need a rich text component, and where is it available? It's available in WP editor. So that's why we make sure that when we register our scripts we pass this WP editor as dependency, otherwise those components won't be available to us. Okay, great. So instead of div I'm going to use a rich text. Okay, and if you work with React you know how these components work. That's the syntax of writing a component, and it's going to take tag name, which means what is the type. By default it's div, but since we are dealing with p tag, I want this to produce a p tag, that's why I'm putting tag name as p. And then I want to write a method. Basically I want that every time user types something over here, a function should be called, a method should be called, and that should modify the attributes value, the current attributes value. So I'm going to put an onChange event. I'm going to also create a function on top, and I'm going to use onChange is equal to arrow function. Okay, new content. So new content will contain whatever the user the data whatever users entered inside of this p tag. Okay, then this okay, and remember we spoke about that these props actually have set attributes method, which is as good as your set state. So instead of saying props dot set attributes, why don't we pull this information out? So if it was ES5 you will probably do like this. You will say set attributes is equal to props dot set attributes, right, to get this information. So instead of, and then if you have attributes, if you want to get information of attributes, you will do like this, props dot attributes, because this is props and this attributes. But instead of doing this, ES6 provides us with the syntax, which is object destructuring. So we use open and close the curly braces, and inside of this we can pull all of this information, whichever we want. We can just pull it up. So we can say attributes, and we can say we want the set attribute method also. Let's pull it up, is equal to props. So that's, so it's equivalent to what we just typed using var. Okay, of course it's a constant and that was var, that's a different thing, but I'm just telling you that writing the syntax is much easier with ES6. Okay, so I have set attribute method that I can use now. So it's available here, and I can just say on change content. I can just name that, Okay, so remember when you used to write set state, you used to write like this, and then if you consider this as state content, so you used to write like this content, and then whatever the new value is, xyz whatever. Okay, so similarly you will use set attributes that Gutenberg provides us. Okay, so now we'll say content, and what will be the value of new content? The value of this will be equal to new content. So, and now we can call this method here on change event. So what will happen is when the user types something, this method will be called. Every time user types, this method will be called, and this is going to call this method. New content will contain whatever the value user has typed, and set attribute method is going to take that value and set our actual attributes content value to be the new content. Okay, now let's also pass a value over here, and this will be attributes dot content, because remember we are putting the information what the user has typed into content of attributes, and whenever if you want to see that also visibly on the browser, then we need to put that information in the value. Okay, so that's that. So let's see if this is working. Remember our Webpack is already running, so we don't have to worry, it's handling all the bundling thing. So let's refresh the page, and now let's pull a block, and now if I type something, you can see that the edit method is called. Okay, I think I need to get rid of this, we don't need this. Okay, let me just refresh the page one more time. Okay, let's type Imran, and you can see every time we are typing something, edit method is called. Remember we spoke about it, it's like render method. Okay, so every time the state changes, this is called. Why the state is changing is because first of all a state is maintained for this block, and then we using set attribute to change the value of the attribute, so hence the state is changing, hence this method is called. Okay, so every time this is changed, edit method is called. Okay, so we are putting this content over here. So if you open this, if you check in attributes content, you can see the name is Imran. Look at the previous one, it was IMRA because that's what I typed at that time, and so on. So the first one would have been just I. You can see this, right? So each time you type a letter or content, you can see that this method is being called, and it is setting the attributes content value to this. And notice that this value will also be available to save method, like I said, but this method will only be called when you save the data. So let's try it out. What I'm going to do is I'll get rid of this, I'll create a new arrow function, and inside of this of course I need props, so props will be passed. Let's console log save method props. That's the name I've given, and I want props to be displayed, and let's just return nothing for now. Okay, and let's try it out. Let's refresh the page. Okay, so ideally what I'm expecting is, let me just take a new one. So ideally what I'm expecting is that when I save it, this method should be called, right? Because that's what it is for. So if I type Imran, if I click on save, you can see save method is called, and you can see inside of attributes I have Imran available. So why it is available, why do I have Imran over here, is because when you actually type something, that had put the content value, which is attributes content value, to the new content, which is Imran, and that same attribute is also available to the save method along with edit method, and that props is now being displayed here. Okay, so now since we have the data that we want to save, all we have to do is just return a component over here, and Gutenberg says that instead of using rich text, use rich text dot content to save the content properly in your save method. Okay, and it would need some data. It would need tag name, what type of HTML tag you want to generate. So it'll be tag name is p tag, like we have done it on top. You can see this one. And then all we need is just value. So what will be the value? Value will be props dot attribute dot content. Notice that I didn't have to do props on top, is because we pulled that attributes value from props. We can do that here as well, but for now let's just leave it, just to tell you that this is basically equivalent to this, okay, because we pulled attributes out of props using object destructuring on top, right? Now let's see if this is working. Okay guys, so let's see it in action now. Let's refresh the page, open a new one. Ignore this one because we made a lot of changes, that's why you see these errors. So that was the previous block. Okay, great. Now let's put a basic example. I'll type some content, edit was called, publish it, then save will be called, and sure enough you can see this value here, right? And now if I check view post, you can see this is saved. Brilliant. So that's congratulations guys, you've actually created your first blog where you're able to take an input from the user, dynamically save that to the database, and also display it correctly. Awesome, great. Now I also want to show you a few things as to how does it get saved into the database and how is it pulled out of that. Okay, so let's go to phpMyAdmin and let's have a look. I'm going to refresh it. I'm into the WordPress database, latest WP post, and I'm going to go to the last one. I think I'm already on the last, if I'm not wrong. No, I'm not. Okay, I'll click on this. I'll go to the last post, go for the published one, and see how we're getting the data as. So you can see you have a common delimiter. So on top you have a common delimiter. It is prefix WP, and then it's taking my Guten dash block test block. So that's information has been taken from here. So namespace and the name of the block, and that's the ending tag as well. And inside of this they have got the p tag with the class name and my name, which is the content that's been printed, right? If you want to see this clearly, there's another way you can do it. You can come over here and you can click on these three dots and click on code editor, and you can see this clearly over here, right? Great. Now so I want to talk about common delimiter actually. Okay, so how is it actually pulling up the data? We understood about how it's editing the data, how it's passing it to attributes, how that attribute value is being passed as props to save, and we are saving it, but how it is actually displaying that data, how it is pulling the data out of this actually. Okay, so we need to understand that. So let's talk about that one. So guys, in this situation it is the attribute sources which are helping you. So attribute source, why? Because over here in the attribute we have mentioned that source, get me the value from p tag, which is this, and the children of it, which is this children, right? So it's pulling the data out of that. So attribute sources help you extract block attribute values from the saved post content. So this is the saved post content, and in extracting the value out of that, they help you map from the saved markup to a JavaScript representation of a block. So it's a JavaScript representation of a block, guys. If no attribute source is specified, the attribute will be saved and read from block's common delimiter. So what this means is that if you don't specify this value, let's say I get rid of this, I don't specify this, okay, so what will happen in that situation? So it means that that information will be saved here in the common delimiter, and that will be pulled from there and not from the children of the p element. So let's try that. Okay, so let's say I create a new post, close this, I will click on this, I type Imran, I publish it, and again if I want to see, either I can go into the database or I can just click on these three dots, click on code, and see it. So if you notice, because we didn't use source, right, we didn't use source property, that's why it saved that information in the common delimiter, content Imran, that's right, content and then Imran. So it saved that information there. So how would it actually get that information from the comment delimiter? I mean, I can understand it was getting it from the p tag and the children of it, but how did it actually get it from the comment delimiter? So guys, behind the scene it uses HPQ, which is a small library used to parse and query HTML markup. So let me show that to you. Okay, so if you go over here into my blog, which I've written for the same thing, okay, and there's a link over here, HPQ. So you can see this is a small library. It uses different methods to pull data out of the attributes basically. Okay, so you can say that attribute sources are superset of the functionality provided by HPQ. It's a small library used to parse and query HTML markup into an object shape. Okay, so it uses that. If I want to show you demo, there's a try explorer demo also. So you can see that it's saying text, it's querying the data from the p element, which is p element, and it's running the text method to get the data. You can see in text it's getting the entire data out of the p tag, and then this site, it's running the text method to get the data from the site, and it's getting the data from site, right? So it's using the HPQ actually. Okay, and there are different types of sources that you can use actually. You know, you have attribute, you have text, so you can type attribute over here, and then over here, for example, it was an image tag, then you can, in attribute, you can define source of that image tag and things like that. Okay, you have HTML, you have query, you have meta, all of that information. Okay, so behind the scene it uses HPQ to get that data, okay, from the attribute sources, not from the comment delimiter but from the attribute sources. Okay, and what are the benefits actually of storing the data into comment delimiter, guys? So first of all, I would say that whereas HTML attributes are complicated to parse properly, comments are quite easily described by a leading sign like this. I'll just show you, by a leading sign like this and then ending like this. Okay, this simplicity and permissiveness means that parser can be implemented in several ways without needing to understand the HTML properly. So the parser is the one who's responsible to parse that information from the comment delimiter. Okay, now these explicit boundaries also protect damage in single block from bleeding into another block, so it doesn't get mixed up into another block or tarnishing the entire document. And the best part is, guys, that we can also use JSON literals inside the comment. Okay, so parser is the one, I think it's the HPQ parser itself, which you know, parses the information from the comment delimiter. So this is basically your comment delimiter, and we are saving the data inside the comment delimiter if we are not specifying source over here. Okay, so let's put it back to normal. Now the next up thing that I want to tell you guys is that this rich text which you see over here, why do we use that? So we discussed, for one thing is for reusability, and second is that earlier we are using create element method to create DOM nodes. So rather than, we can encapsulate this behavior using components, and like I said, components provide you reusability and allow you to hide the complexity into the self-contained units. Okay, so I also want to share with you as to where can you find all of this data, guys. I mean, if you actually have to see the core, WordPress core, and find out where this register block type is defined, I want to show that to you as well. Okay, so if you go to attributes, if you go to this blog that I've written, I'll leave the link for this in the description box. Go to GitHub WordPress Gutenberg. Okay, so guys, this is the repository, and this is where you will find all the core codes for the Gutenberg, and this will be quite helpful for you because not all information is easily available everywhere. Even I study from WordPress.org, I study from the core. Why? Because I know that the information I'm going to get will be 100% correct. If I look for that information through any other sources, I cannot be sure whether that information is valid or not. So it is better that you use the the Git repo that WordPress is providing us for Gutenberg, because that's what it is using behind the scenes. And there are high chances that if you explore core, you will be able to get more information about that particular method, its use case, to actually understand how it works behind the scenes, and you may one day be able to contribute in case if you haven't already in the core. Okay, so let's find out. So I want to discuss about this register block type method. So it's available in the Git repo, and I've left the link there. So if you go to the same repo, WordPress Gutenberg, then go to packages, blocks, source, API, and then you have registration.js. So this is the file in which we are exporting this function. So export syntax is an ES6 syntax. It's used to export a method and make it available to outside world. Okay, so we're using export, and then we're exporting this function, and you can see that it takes two parameters, name and settings. So you can see this is the name, and how do we know what name is? You can get more information here. So the information that you don't find in org, you can find it here, because this will be a detailed explanation of this. So name is a block's name-spaced name. It is not just a name, it's a name-spaced name. What does that mean? This is the namespace, which is, I'm using that as a plugin name, and this is the name of the block. So it's name-spaced name. Then the second parameter is settings. Where is it gone? Yeah, the settings. Okay, so these are your settings. The second parameter from here till here, these are your settings that we are passing. So what does setting take? It takes name. So name is not something we are passing, but we can get that information in the props. We have save method, right? We have this is actually spread operator, so it's spreading all the information inside of these two. Now if you notice that save method is mandatory, guys. If you're registering a block, then save method is mandatory. Even if you don't use edit method, is fine, but save method is mandatory. If you don't define a save method when you register a block like this inside of the register block type function, then you will get an error. And you can see over here it says if edit is defined, then it should be properly valid function. So basically it's saying that save needs to be there. That's mandate. Okay, now there's some other properties available as well. You have title, so you can see we have passed title, category, icon, passed icon, keywords, we haven't used keywords, we have used attributes for sure. And you can pass multiple attributes like this. You can pass more over here, and you can name it something else. Okay. Then you have save and edit method that you can use. So you can see that we got a lot of more information. Now we actually know that you can actually use keywords as well. And what are keywords? The additional keywords to produce block as insert search results. Okay, so we get a lot of information from the core. So it's important that you study it, right? Great. Now let's discuss about this components. Where do we find these? Let's go back to my blog, and we're going to look for the components. So if you go to Gutenberg, WordPress Gutenberg, you can see inside packages, block editor, source components. So these are all the components that you can use. So if you don't find all the information, or you can come over here, you can see these are the components you can use. So you have alignment toolbar, which I'll be covering in the next video, autocomplete, block title, color palette. I'll cover color palette also in next video. And what we're interested in, rich text. So for each component they have created a directory, and they've also written test. I think they must be using jest for the test. Yeah, I think they are. Okay, and they're also using REDUX, guys, to pass the data, etc. So so inside of that directory we have index.js, where our component recites rich text. So you can see there are different things going on. You're not interested in all of this. You can see there are different methods defined, component will mount, that's all React. We are interested in rich text. Here it is. You can see this is a class, and it extends React's component. We have constructor method, we have these methods defined inside of it, we have save content, there's a state also. Then we have what we're interested in the render method, guys. So I'm just going to type render. Here it is. So you can see what all you can pass in this. So you can pass, so currently you only knew that you could pass tag name, on change, and value. What else can you pass? So you can find this information here. You can pass tag name, and you can see default value is div. So if you don't pass anything over here, default is div. So how did I get to know that default is div? I had to look at the core and I could find that information. Similarly, you can pass style over here. You can just type style and give some values, color, blue, whatever. Okay, like that. Then you can pass class name. So class name is also something that's available inside the attribute, guys. So if you check we also have class name available, so you can make use of that. Okay, and then so for example, if I want to show you how you can use that, you can put class name is equal to, and we can pull out class name over here, pass class name, and here as well in the saved put class name, and this time we'll do props because we haven't pulled it out using object destructuring. Attributes dot class name, sorry, yeah, class name. Okay, great. That's how you can pass it and save it. Okay, where were we? So you have inline toolbar, you have formatting controls, placeholder. You also have placeholder. That's great. Okay, is selected, all of that, and we can also pass more, like we have value and our methods, own methods as well, event listeners basically. Great. So you can see now that this is how you can explore core, and it is important, guys, to explore core because you may find more information that can be helpful for you to understand. Okay, so you should start with core and WordPress org. If you don't find information there, that's when you explore information anywhere else. That's how it should be. Great, guys. So I hope, guys, you did like my video. I'm just going to give you a recap quickly, just so that everything is clear. Okay, so what we did is basically we registered this component using register block type. This is the namespace, name of the component, title, icon, category. These are the attributes that we created. We targeted the p element and the children of it, which is the text inside of it, with a type of array. We pass this information to edit and save method using props. Each time user changes something over here in the editor, not exactly here, but you know what I mean. Here, if the user changes something, edit method is called. When it is called, then we are returning rich text component that Gutenberg provides us, which is basically a p element. If you do an inspect element, you'll be able to see that it's a p element actually, because you put p over there. See, where is it? My God. Yep, if you check this 3 code, you can see it's a p tag. Yeah, great. Okay, so then every time user changes something, type something on the editor, if we type something over here, then we call this function. This function is called on change content because there's an on change event attached to it. This goes and sets an attribute content value of the attribute here to the new value which user has entered over here. This attribute is then passed to save method as well. Whenever the same method is called, when we publish the data, it extracts, it uses that value, that what has been put over here by the edit method, by the on change content method. Okay, and it puts that information on RichText.content. And if I had to show you this information, why am I using this? The best way is to look at core, guys. Remember, we spoke about it. So let's look at the core. Okay, let's go back. If you go to readme.md, guys, for the component RichText, scroll down, you can see all the methods are available what you can use. It says rich text content should be used in save function of your blog to correctly save the rich text content. So how did I know about this information? I looked at the core, guys. Simple. Okay, so you can see how to use it. You get a lot of information here. Okay, so we use it here and we save all the information that we receive from the attributes. Okay, so that's how it is saved in the database. So I hope, guys, you did like my video. If you did, please do subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. If you have any questions, please do comment, do share my videos with others. You can also follow me on Instagram as well as on Twitter. My Twitter handle is imranhsayed. Okay, and I promise you guys there are a lot of more exciting videos that are going to be coming for Gutenberg as well, and other tutorials as well. So you're going to learn a lot about Gutenberg in depth. It will not just be showing you how to do it, but also explain to you line by line what's going on, why it is done, and also explain to you everything. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Do subscribe to my channel and take care. Bye bye.